Let me tell you this story the way it actually felt, not the way it looks in hindsight. Because Ray Kroc's life only becomes impressive after you understand how ordinary, exhausting, and unrewarding most of it was. For more than 50 years, nothing worked, and that matters. Ray Kroc was born in 1902 in Oak Park, Illinois, to Czech immigrant parents. His family did not raise him with ideas of greatness. They raised him with expectations of survival. Work hard, be useful, don't complain. Those were the rules. Ambition was not discussed, stability was. From an early age, Ray showed restlessness, not brilliance, not rebellion. Restlessness. He was uncomfortable staying still, uncomfortable accepting systems that felt inefficient or slow, but he had no language for that discomfort yet. He dropped out of high school during World War I and lied about his age to join the Red Cross as an ambulance driver. The war ended before he reached Europe. Even his first attempt at meaning arrived too late. That pattern would follow him for decades. After the war, Ray drifted. He tried to find himself in music, playing piano in bars and small venues. He was good enough to be paid, but not good enough to be remembered. He sold paper cups. He chased commissions. He tried to start small ventures that never stabilized. None of these failures were dramatic. That's what made them dangerous. They were quiet failures, the kind that don't destroy you, but slowly convince you that this is as far as life goes. By his 30s, Ray had experience but no momentum. By his 40s, he had effort but no results. People around him began to settle into lives that made sense. Careers formed, families stabilized, futures became predictable. Ray's did not. What he did have was an unusual tolerance for rejection. Not optimism, not confidence, tolerance. He could hear no repeatedly without collapsing. That skill does not feel heroic when you're living it. It feels like stubborn exhaustion. Sales became his long-term role because sales required endurance more than brilliance. Ray sold multi-mixers, milkshake machines that could produce 5 shakes at once. It sounds impressive now. Back then, it was just another piece of equipment most restaurant owners didn't want. He drove constantly, alone, across endless highways. He stayed in cheap motels. He memorized menus of diners that barely looked up when he walked in. Some owners laughed him out. Some waved him away mid-sentence. Most didn't care enough to reject him properly. Ray learned how to finish pitches even when no one was listening. Years passed like this. By the early 1950s, Ray Kroc was in his early 50s. His marriage had failed. His savings were thin. His reputation was unremarkable. If you had met him then, you would not have seen a future billionaire. You would have seen a tired salesman with too much energy for his age and nothing to show for it. He had been fired before. He had failed businesses before. He had started over so many times that starting over no longer felt brave. It felt necessary. Then something small happened. So small that almost anyone else would have ignored it. An order came in for 8 multi-mixers from a single restaurant in San Bernardino, California. 8. Ray noticed immediately. No diner needed 8 milkshake machines unless something strange was happening. Most restaurants struggled to justify one. Curiosity pulled him west. This was not a moment of destiny. There was no dramatic realization in the car. It felt like another long drive, another pitch, another chance to be disappointed. When Ray arrived, he expected to see a typical roadside restaurant. Instead, he saw motion. The McDonald brothers had stripped their operation down to its essentials. A short menu. No waitresses, no plates, no wasted movement. Food moved with mechanical precision. Customers received meals in seconds. Ray stood there watching, not with awe, but with recognition. This was not about hamburgers. This was about systems. Ray had spent his entire adult life irritated by inefficiency without knowing where to place that irritation. Now he saw a structure that respected his instincts. Everything had a purpose. Nothing existed without reason. The brothers were not dreamers. They were careful operators. They had already achieved what they wanted. They had no interest in expansion. They were suspicious of scale. Ray was not. But here is the truth people often erase. Ray did not leave that day with power. He did not own anything. He did not become important. He went back to selling milkshake machines. Only now, he could not stop thinking. The idea followed him through highways and motel rooms. He imagined the same restaurant replicated endlessly, unchanged. He imagined families trusting consistency in a world full of unpredictability. He proposed franchising, The brothers hesitated. They had been burned before. They did not trust growth. Ray returned, again and again, not because he was persuasive, but because he refused to disappear. Eventually, reluctantly, they agreed to let him try. Ray Kroc was 52 years old. He borrowed money he did not comfortably have. He walked away from the relative safety of commission sales. He accepted responsibility without authority, risk without guarantees. The early franchises struggled. Operators cut corners, they added menu items, they ignored rules, the system fractured. Ray felt every mistake in his body. Money became tight, brutally tight. There were months when basic expenses felt heavy, moments when quitting would have been reasonable, moments when age whispered that this was foolish. But Ray was no longer chasing success, he was chasing order. And once someone like Ray Kroc sees a better system, they cannot return to a broken one without suffering. This is where the real story begins. Ray Kroc learned something brutal very early in the second life he had chosen. Wanting something to work does not make it work, and believing in a system does not mean others will respect it. The first franchises were messy, not because the idea was weak, but because people are unpredictable. Owners interpreted rules loosely. They added items to the menu because they thought customers wanted choice. They bought cheaper ingredients because margins felt thin. They treated the system as a suggestion rather than a discipline. To Ray, this was unbearable. He was not obsessed with control because he loved power. He was obsessed because he believed inconsistency was a kind of betrayal. If a customer trusted the name, that trust had to be honored every single time. Anything less felt dishonest. So Ray worked harder. He drove more, he argued more, he corrected more. He became known as difficult, rigid, old-fashioned. Younger operators thought he was out of touch. Some believed they knew better. Some quietly resented him. A few openly challenged him. Ray did not soften. He had lived too long with failure to allow sloppiness to ruin the one thing that finally made sense. Financially, things were deteriorating. Franchise fees were small. Royalties barely covered operating costs. Ray's income shrank instead of growing. At an age when most men counted what they had left, Ray was bleeding cash. There were nights when he sat alone doing numbers that did not work. He questioned himself, not dramatically, but persistently. Had he misunderstood scale? Had he overestimated discipline? Had he arrived too late again? What kept him going was not hope. It was irritation. The same irritation that had followed him since youth. The sense that something obvious was being missed, that a better structure existed if he could just see it clearly enough. Then he did. The realization did not come in a boardroom or a flash of inspiration. It came quietly, through frustration. Ray understood that his problem was not food, it was leverage. He could argue with franchisees forever and still lose. But if he controlled the land beneath the restaurants, control would become structural instead of emotional. Real estate. The restaurants did not need to just follow rules. They needed to depend on them. Ray created a separate company to buy and lease the land where McDonald's restaurants operated. This was risky. It required capital he barely had. It required convincing lenders who did not trust him. But once it worked, everything changed. Standards were no longer negotiable, they were contractual. If franchisees wanted the location, they followed the system. This move stabilized the entire operation. It turned McDonald's from a fragile idea into a disciplined machine. It also changed Ray's relationship with the McDonald brothers. The brothers had wanted simplicity. They had wanted a modest life. They had never envisioned an empire built on land ownership and national scale. As Ray's influence grew, their discomfort grew with it. Trust eroded slowly. Arguments became frequent. Expectations clashed. Ray felt constrained by agreements that limited growth. The brothers felt their creation slipping away. Eventually, the tension reached its breaking point. Ray made a decision that would define how history remembered him. He bought them out. The price was $2.7 million. On paper, it was fair. In reality, it was devastating. The brothers gave up the future value of what they had created. Ray took full control. He knew exactly what he was doing. This was not a moral victory. It was a strategic one. Ray accepted that progress sometimes requires decisions that leave scars. From that moment on, there was no one else to blame. The expansion accelerated. Training became rigorous. Procedures were enforced without apology. Ray insisted that a hamburger in Chicago taste exactly like one in Los Angeles. Consistency became sacred. People mocked the obsession. They said he treated restaurants like factories. Ray did not deny it. Factories, he believed, fed nations. As McDonald's spread across America, Ray aged visibly. His body slowed, his stamina dipped, but his focus sharpened. He spoke less about dreams and more about standards. He understood something many never learned. You do not scale passion, you scale process. And Ray Kroc had finally built something that could outlive him. Success did not bring Ray Kroc peace. It brought weight. As McDonald's expanded across the country, Ray discovered that building something that works is easier than living with what it becomes. Growth amplified everything. Strengths became rigidities. Discipline became pressure. Control became isolation. Ray was now in his 60s. The world finally saw him as a winner, but his body did not feel like one. He worked relentlessly, traveling constantly, and inserting himself into details that others thought he should delegate. He trusted systems more than people, but even systems needed guardians. Inside the company, Ray was feared as much as he was respected. He demanded precision. He noticed small deviations. He remembered past mistakes longer than most people expected him to. Some executives admired his clarity. Others felt suffocated by it. Ray did not apologize. He believed that clarity without enforcement was decoration. Yet privately, the cost was visible. His health suffered. Relationships strained. He was not a warm leader. He was not emotionally expressive. He struggled to explain why things mattered beyond saying that they did. What drove him was not money. Money arrived late and almost accidentally. What drove him was the idea that chaos could be tamed, that America, vast and inconsistent, could be fed the same meal with the same reliability anywhere. That belief shaped the culture. Training manuals grew thicker. Procedures became sacred texts. Deviations were corrected quickly. McDonald's became a place where predictability was not just promised, but engineered. Critics emerged. Some accused the company of homogenizing culture. Others blamed it for changing eating habits. Ray listened without engaging much. He did not see himself as a cultural force. He saw himself as a builder of systems that responded to demand. Demand, after all, came from people choosing to walk through the door. As the company went public and wealth finally accumulated, Ray felt a strange distance from the numbers. Riches did not rewrite his identity. He still thought like a salesman, still noticed inefficiencies, still fixated on processes. Late success has a different flavor than early fame. It does not intoxicate, it sobers. Ray became more reflective. He spoke openly about how long it took, about how many times he was ignored, about how age did not protect him from doubt. He warned younger entrepreneurs not to romanticize struggle, but also not to underestimate endurance. He understood that timing is not chosen, it is endured. In the later years, Ray stepped back slowly, not because he wanted rest, but because the machine no longer needed constant correction. The systems held. The culture replicated itself. That to him was the real achievement. When he looked at the golden arches, he did not see success. He saw proof that persistence, applied long enough, could outlast talent, youth, and luck. Ray Kroc died in 1984, a billionaire by any measure that counts money. But his real wealth was invisible. It was the evidence that a life does not expire simply because others have moved on. He began his true work at an age when most people believe the window has closed, and he proved something uncomfortable and hopeful at the same time. It is not too late. It is only unfinished. When Ray Kroc looked back near the end of his life, he did not frame his story as a comeback. He framed it as a correction, a long-delayed alignment between who he was and what the world finally allowed him to do. He understood that most people do not fail because they lack ability. They fail because the environment never meets them at the right moment. And sometimes that moment arrives so late that most have already stopped watching. Ray never stopped. He had spent decades being underestimated, not because he was weak, but because he did not fit the myth of early brilliance. He was too old, too intense, too ordinary, too persistent in a way that made others uncomfortable. The world prefers talent that arrives with speed. Ray arrived with pressure. What his life ultimately revealed is that endurance is not passive. It is active resistance against erasure. Every year he kept going. He was quietly refusing the idea that relevance expires. McDonald's did not succeed because Ray loved hamburgers. He barely talked about food. It succeeded because he respected systems more than ego, discipline more than inspiration, repetition more than novelty. Those values are rarely celebrated in youth-driven cultures. They are noticed only after they win. Ray's story unsettles people because it removes excuses. Age was not his advantage, it was his burden. Failure was not his teacher by choice, it was his environment. What changed was not the world, it was his refusal to leave the game. He did not reinvent himself. He persisted until the world caught up to what he had always been. When people ask what the lesson is, the answer is not motivation, it is orientation. Do not ask how fast it can happen. Ask how long you are willing to remain unfinished. Ray Kroc lived most of his life in that unfinished space. No applause, no certainty, just forward motion fueled by irritation, discipline, and an unshakable belief that things could be better if done correctly. He did not win early, he did not win cleanly, he did not win comfortably, but he won honestly, in the only way that was available to him, by staying. And that is why his story matters. Not because it promises success, but because it redefines when a life is allowed to begin. For Ray Kroc, it began at 52, and it never stopped after that.